There was once a weapon so deadly, so brutally effective, that it shook both kingdoms and cathedrals. A weapon condemned not only by rulers of men, but by the very representatives of God on earth. The medieval church declared it hateful to the Almighty, an invention unworthy of Christian hands. What kind of weapon could terrify both soldiers and saints? What machine could make knights tremble and priests cry blasphemy? The answer is the crossbow, silent, merciless, the great equalizer. To understand the chaos this weapon unleashed, we must first step into the age it threatened to destroy, the world of knights. Picture the medieval battlefield. The ground shakes beneath charging horses, the clash of steel rings through the air, and at the very heart of this spectacle stands the knight, wrapped in glittering armor, shield gleaming in the sun. To face him was to stare down death itself. Knights were not born, they were made. From the moment of childhood, noble sons were taken into training. As pages, they served lords, learning discipline and duty. As squires, they learned to ride, to hunt, to wield real steel, and to serve in battle. By the time they were dubbed knights, they were warriors forged by years of blood, sweat, and iron. But becoming a knight demanded more than skill. It demanded wealth. Horses bred for war cost fortunes. A suit of armor could take months to forge and was worth more than an entire village's harvest. Swords, shields, lances, all carefully crafted by masters. Every piece of equipment screamed privilege. And above all of it stood noble birth. Without the right bloodline, you could never ascend. This made knights more than fighters. They were symbols. They embodied the monopoly of violence held by the nobility. Their armor was not just protection, it was power, it was hierarchy. It was the visible proof that war belonged to them alone. The church blessed them, kings relied on them, peasants feared them. If you were a common farmer, bent over in the fields, your life was bound to serve. You provided food, taxes, labor, and when summoned, you marched to war not as equals, but as fodder. Against a knight, you stood no chance. His armor laughed at your pitchfork. His sword cut through you as if you were nothing. His horse trampled you into the earth. Knights were untouchable. They were the iron walls that protected the old order of Europe. And for centuries, that order seemed unbreakable. Until the crossbow appeared. The crossbow was not a new idea. Its roots stretched back to ancient China, where armies had once marched with rows of crossbowmen. But in Europe, when it returned during the time of the Crusades, it was like a thunderclap across the battlefield. Unlike the mighty longbow, which demanded years of practice and a body hardened by strength, the crossbow was simple. Its genius lay not in the strength of the user, but in the mechanics of the weapon itself. The string was drawn with levers or cranks, the bolt was locked into place, and with one steady squeeze of the trigger, death flew silently through the air. That simplicity was revolutionary. A lord could place one in the hands of a peasant, and within weeks, not years, he could fire with deadly accuracy. The longbow demanded a lifetime. The sword demanded endless training, but the crossbow required only patience, and the results were horrifying. A knight who had spent decades preparing for battle could be dropped in an instant by a man who, weeks earlier, had been pushing a plow. It was not just a weapon, it was a statement, a challenge to the entire social order. Imagine the shock of nobles who had ruled for centuries from horseback, clad in iron, believing themselves untouchable. Suddenly, a farmer with dirt under his fingernails could look across a battlefield, lift this strange wooden machine, and with a single pull of the trigger, end a lineage that had reigned for generations. The crossbow was the great equalizer, and the medieval elite knew it. The bolts of the crossbow were unlike arrows from a bow. They were shorter, heavier, crueler. At close range, they could smash through chainmail, split helmets open like eggshells, even drive straight into plate armor, the very armor that knights believed made them invincible. Contemporary accounts paint a grim picture. Byzantine Princess Anna Komnene called it a diabolical invention, a machine so terrifying that even the bravest knights dreaded the snap of its string. She was not alone. Chroniclers across Europe describe battlefields where knights once thought untouchable fell like common men. What horrified the nobility was not just the killing power, it was the way it stripped away the very idea of honor. A duel with swords was personal. To face a longbowman required skill, strength, and courage on both sides. But the crossbow, it made killing mechanical, distant, cold. A peasant could crouch behind a wall, unseen, and with a simple squeeze of the trigger, end a knight's life in an instant. No clash of steel, no test of courage, no display of knightly valor, just a bolt and death. Imagine the insult. A knight who had trained since childhood, who had spent fortunes on armor and horses, who carried the blessing of God on his sword, could be ended by a farmer who had never swung a blade. To nobles, it was dishonor. To the church, it was sin. The crossbow was more than a weapon. To the medieval world, it was an abomination, an invention that turned centuries of tradition upside down with a single, merciless snap. By the year 1139, the outrage could no longer be ignored. At the Second Lateran Council, bishops, priests, and cardinals gathered under the authority of Pope Innocent II. Among the many decrees issued that year was one that struck directly at the heart of this new weapon. Canon 29 thundered, "We prohibit, under anathema, the use of the crossbow and similar arms against Christians and Catholics." This was no ordinary ban. To break it was not merely illegal, it was a sin, one that could damn your soul. The church had banned weapons before, but never like this. The crossbow was declared hateful to God himself. Why such fury? Because the church understood the danger. This weapon did not just kill men, it killed the hierarchy that sustained medieval society. It endangered nobles, weakened kings, and threatened the divine order that the church claimed to uphold. If a peasant could kill a knight, what else might he dare to challenge? Perhaps the king, perhaps even the church itself. And yet, as history shows, bans are fragile things. The temptation was too great. Armies continued to use it. Mercenaries sold their deadly skills to the highest bidder. Crusaders carried crossbows across the seas, where they were unleashed on non-Christians with devastating effect. The ban was clear. You could not use it against Christians, against Muslims, pagans, or anyone outside the faith. That was another matter entirely. Hypocrisy aside, the decree proved powerless. Kings desperate for survival ignored it. Generals seeking victory embraced it. And each time the bolts flew, the world of the knight trembled. The crossbow did not erase knights overnight. The armored warrior still rode into battle for centuries to come. But the crack had appeared. The illusion of invincibility was shattered. For the first time in living memory, a common man could look at a noble lord and think, "I can kill you." That thought alone was revolutionary. The crossbow whispered a dangerous idea, that power did not belong only to the few, that death could come from the hands of the many, that bloodlines and blessings could not shield you from the pull of a simple trigger. Over time, this whisper became a roar. The crossbow paved the way for the longbow, for the gunpowder musket, for the cannon. Each step further stripped power from the individual knight and placed it into the hands of armies, nations, and common soldiers. The monopoly of violence was broken, and though the church tried to curse it into silence, though nobles branded it dishonorable, the crossbow endured. It became a fixture of medieval warfare, a weapon feared and respected in equal measure. Its legacy was not just in battles won or lives taken, it was in the shifting balance of society itself. Silent, merciless, equalizing. The crossbow was not just a weapon, it was the end of an age and the beginning of another.